Happy hump day, everybody. What are you all up to? We have some old strangers in here, some people we haven't seen in quite a while, some new friends too. Wow. It is yet again another rainy morning here. OJ broke my glasses. I don't know how that happened. They're just specs from the Dollar Tree. If they were from the optometrist, I would take the cat over to the optometrist and say, I'll trade you glasses for the cat. But they were only $1.25 because it's not the Dollar Tree anymore, as you know. Who did I miss in the pre-party? I see Trouble, Carly with an eye. Mermaid said, damn it, OJ. Wendy made it in. A Wolf is here. Niece is in. Susie Sue. So glad you guys are here. Some people cannot see the poll question, and the poll question is, do you believe in the Odin theory? Now, this case cannot get any more dark, complex. We already had a very complex investigation that went on for years. And there's so much drama going on, but it's not between like YouTube creators like we see in other cases. It's legal drama. We already lost a judge. Richard Allen was unrepresented for some time. And now this. Leaked photos that somebody was trying to get put online. Leaks, leaks, leaks. The murder sheet's getting the blame for the leaks, but it wasn't them. They actually did the right thing. In no way in hell would I share the pictures at all. From what I have heard, my understanding is they're beyond disturbing. And they said, when you see them eventually, because I don't want to see them, okay? It explains why Doug Carter said no one was prepared for the evil over that hill. My understanding is the photos back up this sacrifice theory. I have not seen them. If I did, I wouldn't share them. I can say that for a fact. I've seen different Facebook groups where the admins have said, don't even try to put those pictures through. Susie Sue said, can't imagine wanting to see them. Well, you know, some people are into what I call death porn. They really are. Snow said, how do people get a hold of them? Aren't they protected? Ah, you are so right. There is a gag order, but someone thought they were being slick. Well, it got to the wrong YouTuber because Murder Sheet wouldn't do it. Had they had snuck them over to Zav Girl, they'd be everywhere. But maybe she learned her lesson. I don't know. Two Boston Mom says, I'm with Susie. Bamboo Cat said, no, don't want to see him. Don't want to see him. Well, let's take a second and tell everyone happy hump day. You know what today is.
Oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
Put a 1 in the chat if you've seen the pictures. We're not going to share them because I imagine the families are mortified. Again, we already had a judge relinquish himself. Uh-oh, I lost one of my clips. Hang on. I thought I was prepared, but what do you know? I wasn't. Okay. The Carroll Circuit Judge consists of me, Benjamin A. Diner, the judge. He goes on to say, my bailiff answers the phone, has no experience and no knowledge about the legal process. Thankfully, there is a court administrator that has experience, but she has duties regarding Carroll's circuit in Carroll Superior Courts. That is it. He wasn't quite prepared for what was going on. Not to mention, he was doxxed. And I don't mean, I'm not using the word dox. Everyone already knew his name. And I'm not using the word dox like some YouTube creators use it. The minute someone asks who someone is, they're like, they're doxing me, they're doxing me. And it's like, no, when you talk shit about someone, they're going to ask who you are. That's how it goes. That's called life. That's called being normal. People were calling his house. They were using not just him, which would actually be acceptable, but they were using his family in thumbnails. Delphi is a tiny little town. Tiny little town. So let's go back to the beginning, and then we're going to talk about the Odinism, the leaks. And I know I've been promising a show about Kegan and his dad, Tony, because you can't understand Kegan, not that I'm taking up for him, without understanding his dad, Tony. So we'll talk about Kegan for just a little bit.
This is as a crime scene. We suspect foul play.
And that is the Carroll County Sheriff's Department breaking the news. 2 bodies found east of Delphi. That discovery made during the search for 2 13-year-old girls, Libby German and Abby Williams. Now, this is the area we're talking about, Delphi, Indiana, a tight-knit community here in Carroll County, and they came out strong searching for these girls today. Now, the sheriff, again, is not identifying these bodies found as those of Libby or Abby. This whole situation has been going on for...
Well, they knew who they were looking for, and they knew what they came across. And it has been crazy ever since. Now, not to be insensitive or disrespectful, but a double homicide isn't going to get the coverage that this had. Sorry to say it. We know how the media works. But they knew on the back end that there was something very, very disturbing about the crime scene. This is just a diagram of how they were staged. As you know, they had sticks over them. Many would say one person couldn't do this. I don't put anything past an evil person. I just don't. With enough planning, enough time. But then we have the top cop in Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, in an interview Thursday, said his agency is still looking for others involved in the Delphi murders. So they have not shut down the possibility that others could be involved in this. Maybe it's just a safe way to say it. I don't know. You don't want to look like a dumbass and say he's the only one. Then it turns out there's 4 other dudes out there.
For about 24 hours now. And Eyewitness News reporter Rich Van Wyk spoke with the family, spoke with searchers today, and some of the folks in town about what's happening here. Rich?
John, the firehouse was headquarters for this search. Hundreds of volunteers coming through here, along with police and firefighters and searchers. The bodies, they were found about 2 miles from where we are standing. This is an area east of town by a couple of miles. The most recognizable landmark is the Freedom Bridge. The crime scene, though, is along Deer Creek, a remote area well off the popular trails and scenic walkways used by many of the people in Delphi. The hope among hundreds of searchers turned to heartbreak. Well before authorities announced that 2 bodies were found, the faces and tears of firemen, lawmen, and volunteers told the tragic outcome.
We are investigating this as a crime scene. We suspect foul play. We have not made positive identification of the two bodies.
The bodies were found shortly after noon outside of town along the banks of Deer Creek, about 3/4 of a mile upstream from the teenager's last location. A Snapchat photo taken by Libby German put her and her friend Abby Williams on the abandoned Monon High Bridge early Monday afternoon. They were enjoying a day off from school. The pair never arrived at a location a relative was supposed to pick them up.
It's been a long several hours. It's played tremendously on the emotions of the community.
So if you can group up, like somebody's got a pickup truck or something.
Hundreds of volunteers joined firefighters and police from across the county. They searched and researched a 20-square-mile area, walking through creek banks, the remote woods, wide fields, and buildings. Many of the volunteers know the girls and their families.
Yeah, we do take it personally. We don't know what's happened here.
Hours before the bodies were found, we spoke with Libby's grandfather, Mike Patty.
Very, very good kids. I mean, they're sports oriented. That's their relationship together. They play a lot of sports together, volleyball, softball, baseball, whatever it is.
Okay, and I'm going to address the situation with Mike Patty. As you know, yesterday we did a show about little Michael Vaughn. His mother at the end grabbed the link and was pleading with one of the suspects to just tell what you know. Mike, Patty, their son, I mean, all the families have been fully cooperative. He was nowhere around, and there are people that are still saying that Kelsey, who is Libby's older sister, or Mike had something to do with it. No, stop that. They've been through enough. If they were suspects, I'd be dragging them right now, but they're not. Had a question about Richard at CVS. He was a pharmacy tech. This is the entrance to the CVS in Delphi, Amy. And right there is the sketch of the man they were looking for. He also printed photos for one of Libby's family members before the funeral. He also printed free flyers for them. Yeah.
Investigators wanting to protect the evidence are releasing few details. The presumed murders occurred in a popular, well-used hiking area.
Should people in the community be afraid right now?
Delphi Police Chief Stephen Mullen.
I think people are smart enough in our community to draw their own conclusions about what they should feel and shouldn't feel.
We expect that police are going to be processing that crime scene, John, until they run out of daylight. In addition to local police officials, they're getting help from the FBI.
Now listen to that. They're going to be processing that crime scene until they run out of daylight. Well, it went on much further than that. And we have a good idea why now. You are so right, Mermaid. The accused always tries to stay involved and see how much everyone knows. Well, thank you, Snow, patting me on the back. She said, I love how Brooks can read chat and do the show at the same time. That's talent, my friends. Woo, sometimes I don't, though. Sometimes I miss things. Thank you, my friend.
Feel and shouldn't feel.
We expect that police are going to be processing that crime scene, John, until they run out of daylight. In addition to local police officials, they're getting help from the FBI. Autopsy results should perhaps provide some answers to the questions a lot of Delphi residents are asking.
Yeah, the response here has been overwhelming by law enforcement agencies. Thank you, Rich Van Wyk, tonight.
Scary as hell. Scary. Of course, soon after, well, I say soon, we get this audio that was taken by Libby.
Downhill.
Snow said, creepiest audio ever. True Crime Beat said, hiding in plain sight. That press conference that Doug Carter did, the New Direction press conference, when he said, we think you might be in this room. We're going a new direction. You want to know what we know. Take a gander at this and tell me if you think this is Richard Allen. This was posted to Twitter February 20th, 2018. This dude was apparently lurking around during the press conference. Kind of weird. Could be an innocent guy and could be some bad guy. Remember to stay alert. Kind of looks like him to me. Somebody's spidey sentences were going off. Looks like him to me. Teresa said, I always thought it was him. Hello, Messy Jessie. All right, the defense, before they removed themselves, and we're going to talk about that, before they removed themselves, I think they were about to be kicked off the case. We'll get into that in a second. But they doubled down with this Odin theory. As you know, the last time we talked about Delphi, we talked about the Odin theory, the sacrifice, how the girls were staged, clothes were exchanged, markings on the tree.
Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation.
That's a sense of relief, and yet we still don't feel this sense of joy. Why? The girls are never going to come back.
It's a tragedy for the community here and everywhere.
Shame on you! Shame on you, Richard! You're going to prison for the rest of your life!
Woo! Someone's pissed. Shame on you. Shame on you. You're going to jail for the rest of your life, Richard.
Now to what's trending in true crime. The attorneys for Richard Allen doubling down on their claims of an Odinist cult being behind the killings of Abby Williams and Libby German. In newly found court documents, the defense claims that police hid evidence that supports their theory of a ritualistic sacrifice. Allen's team points to Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett, swearing under oath that a Purdue University professor did not believe symbols of Odinism were displayed on the bodies of Abby and Libby. But according to the defense, prosecutors said they were unable to identify that professor. And once
Okay, this is troubling in itself because the F that's on there in blood does not appear to be blood splatter to my uneducated eyes. It seems to be placed purposely. Again, my uneducated guess. Why can't they track down this Purdue University professor? Did no one have a post-it note and pen available to take down his name? Let's take a second and tell our friend Joy Callie, thank you so much for the gifted memberships. Get your slickers, get your rain boots, get your umbrellas. Thank you so much, Joy, and we love you very much. Joy has a family emergency, I'll put it that way, that she's going through, and it's horrible. We love you, Joy.
Once the educator was identified, the defense says that there was a taped statement given by him, admitting that the scenario seems entirely plausible. What? So are we going to see a battle over Odinism? Let's bring in our guest and talk about it. Still with me, retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Koffendorfer.
Shit. I didn't know she was in this clip. Fuck. All right, we'll just have to grit our teeth, okay?
State Attorney in Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg, and Criminal Defense Attorney and former prosecutor David Bruno. Wonderful to have you all on the panel this Friday morning. Dave Ehrenberg, start us off, please. What are your thoughts on this?
Good to be with you and our fellow panelists. You know, I still think the whole theory is bizarre because we're talking about this weird cult of Odinism, which involves white supremacy. And the bottom line is this defendant confessed while he was in jail. And his take of that is, well, the guards were Odinists and they were standing over me and forced me to confess. I
don't think the guards were forcing him to confess. I don't think so at all. But supposedly they have put together that some of the guards truly are into Odinism. Mind you, this is their research, not mine.
I don't buy it. Also, they found the smoking gun literally at his house, the gun that likely was used in the killing because the calibers, the forensics matched. So I think the chance for the defense here is to get the search warrant pulled where the fruits of the poisonous tree, everything that they found after they searched his place would be thrown out. And that would leave prosecutors with a real problem here. If they can undermine the search warrant, I think that's the key. And that's what they're trying to do here. But for me, there's enough evidence to convict him already.
See, and that's the funny thing about the law. We have people argue all the time. We have some creators that play amateur lawyer and they get on Google and they're type. Oh, that's the law. Look, that's why you have lawyers to argue the law. And their lawyers want the search warrant thrown out. Well, they did, but they're not involved anymore. Don't think that the next crew that comes in won't want it thrown out. And I would too, if I was a defense attorney. Known evidence taken from Richard Allen's house. Barb McDonald, who by the way does amazing work, has stated the following was taken. 2 bundles of dark cloth look like clothing. A shoebox, a Macy's shopping bag, flash photography items in the shed. Which still, in my mind, tells me he knew the Kleins. There was digging around the shed, a vehicle unsure of the year and make. We also know there was knives, the gun that was there. He's got to be involved somewhere.
Dave Ehrenberg, thank you for those reminders. You know, the unspent round found by the girls' bodies that cycled through his gun, found in his house, as you said. Remember, he was wearing that blue Carhartt jacket, had it at his house. The suspect was wearing it in that video, the confessions. David Bruno, is this just great defense work, putting up a lot of smoke and mirrors for everybody to see?
Yeah, without a doubt. This is what defense attorneys do. And this is a circumstantial case. This is a long investigation, and they were able to use a video from a corner store, as well as all these witness accounts of seeing a man. And also, one of the victims had a cell phone video which depict that man on the bridge and audio saying, "Go down the hill." Now, when
we heard it unclipped, but they might have pieced it together, it was guys down the hill. Let's listen to it again. Connie said, who keeps photos in the shed? Good point. Good point. My understanding about old Richie getting put in the pen as opposed to the county jail is for his own safety. It doesn't just happen in Indiana. It happens in other states. When you have a high-profile case, they're like, we can't keep him safe here.
Add the ballistics, as my colleague Dave says, with the gun that matches the unspent round right next to the victim's body. That's the glue that brings all the circumstantial evidence in. This motion is trying to suppress the ballistics. I mean, it's critical because that would be the tie-in to all of this circumstantial inferences that the prosecutor's going to use. And it's essentially the defense's playbook at an early phase right here, because they understand the significance of the ballistics. They have to essentially lay out their defenses here to try to get the suppression of the ballistics. It's a third-party guilt attack that's playing out in this filing. However, they gotta get the suppression of the ballistics because that's the thing that's gonna tie it all together.
All right, David, the case could go bye-bye, so lots is at stake, even if these claims about Odinism aren't true. You're right. What's really going to be at issue is whether or not the evidence they found in his house when they got that warrant is going to be in or out at the trial. Last but certainly not least, Jennifer Coffendorfer, you've been digging in on this case for quite some time. Tell us what the evidence says to you, please.
Well, I think there's some issues with the evidence. First of all, yes, there are 5 potential confessions that he made over the phone to his mother and to his wife. So this isn't a jailhouse person coming forward. This would be very strong because it's recorded. But there's a lot of issues with him being housed in a maximum security facility in a 9-by-11 cell. And he was eating his paperwork. There's reports that he had basically lost his mind in there and then made these confessions. So the defense is definitely going to shine the light on that issue. And ballistically, this is not a strong case, in my opinion, because that round was extracted not by being fired, but through manual action. That means the extractor marks and the ejection marks are going to be light hits on those casings, or on that casing. And are they going to be able to make a determination that definitely it came from his gun? It's going to be problematic, I think.
Oh, appreciate that, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay, so they cut off of her real quick because she basically just regurgitated what the guy said before. It's gonna be problematic. That's what she always does. Swear to God, every time she gets on Court TV or News Nation, she regurgitates something else. She doesn't know the case. She had a shit fit because she's been saying for years that Ron is the one that did it. And when they said they'd arrested Richard Allen, she looked like she had just bought tickets to a movie and didn't like the ending. She was so butthurt. She almost had a damn childlike fit. Again, she's our idiot of the week. Drives me damn nuts.
We know no date has been set yet for a hearing on these claims the defense team is making. We know that they also have requested a discovery deadline from prosecutors for no later than November 1st. And if their hearing request is granted, they're asking for what's called a Franks hearing. If you hear that term, I usually like to think alliteration, like think Franks, think falsifying. They're trying to make these allegations that police lied in the efforts and kind of falsified some things that formed the basis of that warrant. So if they get this Franks hearing, and if they're successful at the hearing, and this evidence gets suppressed, Should Richard Allen be let out on bond? We're thinking about bond at Court TV today. We were just talking about Brooks Houck and the big bond hearing arguments yesterday in front of the judge. Let me bring back in my guests, see what they think. Do we think the defense is trying to go there? Dave Ehrenberg, back to you, please.
Yeah, and as David said, if you can throw out the search warrant, if you'll suppress the evidence, and without the evidence, what do you have? I mean, Jennifer brings up some good points here. I mean, you don't have a very strong case without that so-called smoking gun, and you have the confessions, but overall, it's not, I think, strong enough to hold him without bond if the search warrant goes bye-bye. So I was a prosecutor, I would fight to the heavens to try to protect the integrity of that search warrant so that you protect the evidence, it doesn't get suppressed, or else I don't think they have a good case.
I appreciate it, Dave. You're right. David Bruno, last word with you, please. How do you see this playing out? Do you think the court is going to give the defense an opportunity to have that Franks hearing that they want?
I believe they will, just because the evidence that's now come up contradicts a statement in the affidavit to support probable cause. Although I disagree with my esteemed colleague here, I do not believe it would result in the release, even if the ballistics is suppressed, because of the tight timeline that they have with Allen on the trail. He himself says that he was there from a couple hours. He says he was parked near a building that was parked erratically, is also confirmed by the convenience store video. And also you got the video from the victim's phone with the man that is similar to the description of Allen right behind them before they're told to go down the hill. So I think there's circumstantial evidence to support it, and I don't think it's going to result in the release, even if they're successful.
Okay. And he knows a little bit more than our idiot of the week. I believe this is problematic. No shit, Sherlock. Even I know that. Goodness. And I would go cross-eyed reading a law book. Gotta be kidding me. All right, so let's get to why the defense team stepped away. This is very dirty pool that was played. You're going to see what I'm talking about. And again, no way in hell would I show these pictures. People have said, who just the handful I've talked to, I'm not that popular, they're saying that they are beyond disturbing, and that it adds up now why Doug Carter, top cop in Indiana, said no one was prepared for the evil over that hill. No one. And we've got Beigefield. The hits just keep coming on hump day, do they not?
So a little while ago, I actually had a conversation with two people, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee. They're a husband and wife team. They co-host a podcast called The Murder Sheet, and they are in this case super deep. Journalist and attorney, they have helped to uncover a lot of details, generate some serious leads in the case. They also got their hands on the leaked photos, the crime scene photos that created a big hullabaloo. And, well, I talked with them earlier today.
Okay, we figured you talked to them. Hullabaloo. My goodness, that should have been the name of the show. Hullabaloo. All right. So, the Murder Sheet got a hold of the crime scene photos. As we know, they leaked some very substantial information I'd say about a year and a half ago. That got everybody buzzing. Oh my gosh, there was a lot in there. There was a lot. And it was just by human error that it was released, and they happened to intercept it, according to them. I don't know them. They're welcome to come on the show. But this is what they're saying about how they came across these photos.
Anya, that was such a surprise in the hearing today. I don't know that anyone really expected it. I don't know if you expected it, but do we think that what happened today was because of the photo leak that you were part of? The photos were leaked to you.
Okay, what Baishfield is talking about is what happened is the defense team stepped away. Talk about a mess as far as justice for Abby and Libby. Because again, we had a very complex investigation. It was year after year to get an arrest. When they have an arrest, the judge steps away. They take their prime suspect and put him in the federal pen, they said, for his own safety. So now we have a constitutional problem. And now, and he was unrepresented for quite a while. He wrote a letter to ask how to get an attorney. They're supposed to appoint one to him. That is a problem. And now his defense team has stepped away.
Yes, I think to start off with, we definitely think what happened today occurred due to the leak, and that these were some of the repercussions or aftershocks of said leak. And as for whether we were surprised, I think we both thought that there was a pretty decent likelihood that the defense attorneys might be removed from the case, that could be a consequence of the leak. But I don't think either of us expected that they would be withdrawing themselves.
My personal opinion is the defense team came in, just my opinion, I don't know these people, and they said, we're going to remove ourselves because they didn't want the judge throwing them off the case. Safe to say, this is the biggest case they have ever handled, and they certainly do not want that removal on their record. I'd be worried about a bar complaint, but that's just me. Because could you imagine if this would cause a mistrial? These pictures are not hard to find.
And I'm so fascinated about the photos themselves, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But Kevin, first to the process and how this happened. Like, first and foremost, this was a gagged case. There are plenty of pieces of evidence that we're not supposed to know anything about. And yet, through a bizarre chain, the pictures came into your possession, you and Anya's possession. How did that happen?
We were contacted by a source that we talked to before, and he sent us these images. And after we talked about it with him, he was pretty shaken about it. He was a little bit stunned that he had these. This is a father. He didn't know what to do. And as we talked about it and the gravity of the situation hit him, he said that we really should do the right thing, which to his mind was to go to law enforcement and give them full information about exactly where he got these images.
And I don't know the guy they got him from. We'll get to that. I think somebody, knowing that the murder sheet has leaked information before, how they came about it, I can only go off what they have said. But they were hoping they would take the bait and that they would put them on their channel.
And give them full information about exactly where he got these images.
And then were you able to tell law enforcement where your source got his or her hands on the photos?
Yes, our source provided us with screenshots of his interactions with the person who had given him the photos, and that revealed quite a lot. We reviewed it, and he basically gave that to us on the condition that we would take it to law enforcement. So when we reviewed it, looking through it ourselves, we realized that there was essentially a middleman between our source and the original leaker, and that the original leaker was a member, a former employee of attorney Andy Baldwin's.
Okay. This is where it gets very hairy. Let's go back because this is really important. Beautiful Messy Balls said the murder sheet didn't release them to anyone. They contacted law enforcement. But they still got into other hands. Okay, listen to how this person who contacted them came into possession of the crime scene photos.
Essentially a middleman between our source and the original leaker, and that the original leaker was a member, a former employee of attorney Andy Baldwin's law firm, and a close personal friend of Andy Baldwin. So that was where we...
A former employee of Andy Baldwin. Are they still in good graces with each other? Was this to sabotage? That I don't know. What do you guys think? Because this came from the defense side.
We sort of pieced together what had happened.
And why I pieced together that I figured today happened because of that. I mean, with that direct sort of chain link all the way back to the defense attorney, it made me wonder, well, what's this defense attorney going to say in court about that? So, Kevin, I know just all responsible news organizations have to really measure the journalism versus the impact on a process. And clearly you both have decided that the murder sheet wasn't going to put those photos out there. Kudos to you. We're not going to either. And I don't know how far, Kevin, you're prepared to go to describe what it was you saw. What can you tell us about those pictures that you saw that were leaked from the case?
I think they were crime scene photos, and they were graphic. They were disturbing, and just looking at them, it was obvious that they were authentic. And beyond that, I say just leave it to the imagination. They were very disturbing images.
Okay, well, I can't imagine a crime scene photo that isn't disturbing. I will say that he is an attorney. She is a journalist. We also heard from law enforcement that came across the scene themselves. And they're seasoned law enforcement. And they said no one was prepared for the evil over that hill. Okay. So for these two to say it's extremely disturbing, then you know it's bad. Okay? You know it's bad. Beautiful Messy Ball, do you want to grab the link and come up, hun? I would love to talk to you. Wiz said the drawings were bad enough. Yes.
Obvious that they were authentic. And beyond that, I say just leave it to the imagination. They were very disturbing images.
I'll press only slightly here, and that is, were the children's bodies in those photos all or part thereof?
I think we're going to probably decline to speak more on it, just out of respect for the families. But I can tell you, I wish I hadn't seen these images. No one should see them except for the jury, ultimately the experts, and the defense and prosecution. These were images that were never meant to be shared, especially before a trial. They are incendiary.
Kevin, can you extrapolate from what you saw? Do you think it may have been an effort on behalf of the defense or someone who supports the defense, might not have been the law office? Do you think it might have been an effort to promulgate this theory that, arose fairly recently, that this was the Odinistic cult, ritualistic sacrifice of children, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think this was an effort to poison the jury, that in fact was their theory?
Okay, before they answer, she's already shaking her head yes. Again, no way in hell would I show the pictures. But listen to their answer. I got to go back so we hear the question.
That arose fairly recently, that this was the Odinistic cult, ritualistic sacrifice of children, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think this was an effort to poison the jury, that in fact was their theory?
I'll certainly answer that. But before I do, I want to stress that we have not seen nor are we aware of any evidence that directly ties attorney Andrew Baldwin to this leak. As far as we know, it was just his friend who was responsible for this. But certainly from the text communications and the screenshots we saw of the communication of the middleman with our source, it seems pretty clear that his motivation for sharing these images was he thought it would be helpful to the defense, that he believed that what was in these images would somehow support their theory of the case.
So he's saying that this would help the defense because what you see in the pictures is going to defend their theory. And, well, their theory is Odinism. This is the drawing we have of the stage bodies, the sticks in formation. So they've seen the text messages. They see what's going back and forth, the conversation with the middleman. And you don't have to have your camera on, beautiful messy ball. And he's saying it would support their theory. Well, hello, beautiful messy ball. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good. What are you thinking?
This whole case is just so confusing. I don't even know what to think. But I think the whole thing with the leak is mind-blowing. But from what I've heard and seen on different channels, legitimate channels too, not the gossip channels, is that the lawyer withdrew. Obviously, we know that. But he's claiming that it was a close friend of his who I guess at one point worked for the law firm, and he came to visit, and they put him in a conference room where apparently they had some of the files, and he went through the files unbeknownst to the lawyer. And that's how he got a hold of the pictures. And apparently he got a hold of some other stuff as well, some other information, which I don't know what that information was, but that's the story that the lawyer is telling. And I've also heard that that the lawyer hired a criminal defense lawyer.
Okay, I read that too. And that's huge if he has a criminal defense lawyer.
Right. And I think I heard that from Court TV, but I can't remember exactly. It might have been News Nation. It might have been, I really can't remember, but it wasn't, like a gossip site that I heard it from. Like it was a legitimate, because I try to stay away from, just gossipy stuff for the most part.
Well, I mean, that's one hell of a defense, don't you think?
Right. I mean,
the other guy excuse. It was the other guy. How do we know he wasn't invited in? He's a former employee and said, "Get what you need."
Right. But even still, like, you are covering a case this big and you're letting somebody that's not involved in the case in a room with the files unattended. Like, that's a no-no. Like, regardless of whether you know the person or not, you don't leave anyone attended with your files on any case, let alone a case this big that has a gag order.
But you're not breaking the gag order if somebody else leaks it.
Right,
but you're breaking the gag order when it comes back and falls in your lap.
Right, but you don't allow anyone unattended with your files, like around your files. Like it's just
their office. They're responsible, point blank. Nobody stole anything. He was in there unattended. That's like blaming a kid for getting into an open package of cookies.
Right. Like you just don't do it. You're in a case, especially a case this big, those files should be under lock and key at all times except when you're physically working on them. You don't leave them with anyone that's not physically working on the case. You just don't. It's just
Do you know if the families have seen the crime scene photos? Because I know you know a lot about this case.
I do not know, and I don't know as much about this case as I do a lot of the others, and as much as I would like to know about it, but it's just mind-boggling to me. It's very rare that I'm speechless like this, and there's just so many twists and turns that you don't know truth from fiction at this point.
Hollywood couldn't write this.
No.
Netflix couldn't write this. It's been insane from the get.
Right. And then you have people who are trying to connect this case to the Delphi case, or not the Delphi case, the Idaho case, and I'm like, wait, what?
You know, and I understand people do that.
Right. And I'm all for a good conspiracy. Sorry, I cut you off. I'm all for a good conspiracy theory, but it's like you need a little bit more than a hunch.
Well, people want it solved. They want microwave justice. They want it solved, and they want it solved fast. And so case comparison is, you know, popular on YouTube. I have decided to stay away from it because it's just, I don't have the education to do it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I could, you know, I mean, I can put out some logic, but that's about it.
Right.
But I mean, a few weeks ago, I did a show, Little Charlotte, that was found alive in New York. Some other creators were saying, this is just like Summer Wells. And I'm like, nothing like Summer
Wells.
And this is nothing like Idaho 4, but to each their own.
Right.
And what's sad is that Abby and Libby have gotten lost in all of this legal drama.
Right. They really have. And it's sad. But hopefully in the end, justice will prevail. It's going to take longer now, but we just have to hope that the justice system will sort it out and have faith in the justice system, even though it's starting to get a little bit, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Sorry, my brain just had a blip. It's getting discouraging at this point. And I feel so bad for their parents and their family members and their friends. We forget, like, they have teenage friends, you know, that are mourning them as well, that don't know what to make of this and that are hearing all of this.
The community, law enforcement, people that were on the trail that day.
Right.
It's messy.
It's very
messy.
Of the middleman with our source, it seems pretty clear that his motivation for sharing these images was he thought it would be helpful to the defense, that he believed that what was in these images would somehow support their theory of the case.
Well, listen, I can't thank both of you enough for coming on the program and giving some clarity to this very unusual bombshell today. Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, your podcast is The Murder Sheet. It's great listening. Thanks to you both for doing this.
Hullabaloo, she said earlier. It's great listening. You gotta be kidding me. These people on News Nation. I love Brian Hinton, don't get me wrong.
He's about the only one I like on there.
All right, so we're going to get to some actual news, and you can hop down anytime. I just wanted your opinion, so don't think you have to stay up here. You're more than welcome to, but sometimes people are like, do I stay? Do I go? You're more than welcome to.
I'll stay for a little bit.
All right.
Good afternoon. We begin with breaking news here at 4 o'clock as Richard Allen's lawyers step down, removing themselves from the Delphi murders case.
That announcement came out in just the last 2 hours as cameras were rolling in the courtroom. So let's get right out to Bob Siegel. He's been at the Allen County Courthouse all day. Bob, fill us in.
Felicia and Dustin, just stunning developments here in Allen County. The entire trial in the Delphi murders case right now is essentially on hold because, as you mentioned, the defendant's attorneys have both stepped down from this case. The most telling moment that happened in today's short hearing happened before the hearing even started. What I can share with you is that the defense attorney, Brad Rosie, he walked into the courtroom. He approached Richard Allen's wife and mother in the gallery, whispered something to them, and then they all left the courtroom together. We would not see them again for the rest of the afternoon. Moments later, we understood what that was foreshadowing. The judge started the hearing and she made a surprise announcement.
We've had an unexpected turn of events, ladies and gentlemen. Earlier this afternoon, the defense attorneys have withdrawn their representation of Mr. Allen. Mr. Baldwin made an oral motion to withdraw. I granted that oral motion to withdraw, and Mr. Rosie will be submitting a written motion to withdraw, I'm assuming within the next couple of days.
So again,
I believe it has to do with the links. Not the links, the leaks. Just my opinion.
Do we know if Richard Allen was in court that day?
He didn't get to see anything. From what I'm understanding, they have to move it. He didn't get to have his day in court so much. I'm sure they have moved him to the courthouse.
Right. I didn't see him in the courtroom when the judge was making the announcement.
Now that both of the attorneys have stepped down in the case, what comes next? Well, new counsel is going to have to be appointed. The judge said that that will happen because Richard Allen's status, he is still considered indigent. All the evidence that was shared with the defense team, that is going to have to be returned to the state. There is a hearing coming up on October 31st to set a new trial date. Whether the trial is going to be delayed a matter of weeks or months is yet to be seen, but this will likely be a significant delay in the trial for Richard Allen. And for the time being, certainly the January 8th trial date, the trial that was set to begin early next year, that date is now going to be off the books. So I can tell you in the courtroom, State Police Superintendent, investigators were in the courtroom. As soon as this was announced, the state superintendent of police looked at me, gave a big sigh. This throws the entire proceedings right now really up in the air as far as what's going to happen next. So why did all of this happen? Well, Emily Longnecker is going to be coming up at 4:30. She's going to explain some documents that were filed in court this morning that really help us to understand why the defense attorney stepped down and why the judge in this case made this dramatic announcement. Dustin, Felicia?
Yeah, those documents certainly provide some potential insight into that. You mentioned Richard Allen's mom and his wife inside the courtroom. Bob, what about Richard Allen? Was he in the courtroom at all?
Richard Allen was here in the courthouse today. In fact, his wife got to go back into chambers behind the courtroom to visit with him before the hearing took place, but we never saw Richard Allen.
Okay, so just like I heard, he was there and then got sent back to jail. Sometimes these media outlets, one will say black, one will say white. So they met with him, say we have to withdraw. And let's face it, they're not public defenders in name only, if you know what I mean. They've really been working this case because this Odin theory really threw things into a tailspin.
Right.
Because all you have to do is put it out there to poison a jury.
The other thing is they're not traditional public defenders. They're private attorneys. Delphi doesn't have traditional public defenders. They pull from a pool of private attorneys for their public defenders. Because they're such a small town, they don't have from my understanding, they don't have public defenders because they have such a little amount of crime that they have a pool of private attorneys that are contracted out to, so when they need a public defender, they pull from this pool of private attorneys.
And that's actually common in small towns.
Right.
And it's common in small towns for the local police to not be equipped. And so they have to bring in the FBI. And in this case, you know, the Idaho State Police, not Idaho, shit. The Indiana State Police.
Right.
Hence why Doug Carter has really, I mean, been the spokesman for years.
Right. It's also not as in these small towns, the crime rate isn't as high, especially like the crimes that they don't need public defenders, like, because usually the income is higher, so they don't need a public defender for the types of crimes that are committed, because the crime rate is lower and the income is higher. So the need for public defenders isn't there. Most of the crimes are small things like traffic offenses or DUIs, stuff like that.
Yeah, and that wouldn't take 2 seconds for an attorney to handle.
Right.
And so they keep it like that. They don't, you know, and that's common. I mean, in smaller towns.
Right.
The chambers behind the courtroom to visit with him before the hearing took place, but we never saw Richard Allen. The judge, since his attorneys had stepped down, essentially, she saw no point to bring Richard Allen into the courtroom. She ordered him to be returned to the Westville Correctional Facility. So we did not get to see Richard Allen at all today. We did see the families of the victims. Abby and Libby's families were in the courtroom. They left today without any comment. Of course, there's still a gag order in this case. So the families and all the attorneys and the investigators, they're really not allowed to say anything at this point to the media at all.
All right, Bob Siegel reporting live from Allen County outside the courthouse. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We will check in a little bit later and continue our team coverage. And this announcement is just the latest hurdle to hit this case, and it comes as the families of Abby Williams and Libby German continue to wait for answers.
Yeah, they have waited so long. It has been more than 6 years since the two teens were found murdered in Delphi. Let's take a look at the legal developments since that day. On February 13th, 2017, Libby and Abby disappeared. The next day, their bodies were found. A day after that, on February 15th, police revealed images of the suspected killer. February 22nd, they released a recording of the alleged killer's voice saying, "Down the hill." In July of 2017, police released a sketch of the alleged killer. Then, nearly 2 years later, in April of 2019, state police released an updated sketch and additional audio. On October 26, 2022, Richard Allen was arrested and on the 28th, charged. Police announced Allen's arrest in Libby and Abby's murders 3 days later. November 3rd, Richard Allen is transferred to the Westville Correctional Facility, a state prison in Northwest Indiana. On November 29th, a redacted probable cause is released. This summer, on June 15th, we learned the trial date, set for January 8th, 2024. September 20th, Allen's attorneys submitted a filing alleging the girls' deaths were part of an Odinist ritual sacrifice and accused detectives of ignoring or intentionally suppressing evidence for years. Earlier this month, the judge called a hearing ordering all parties to be in attendance, and on October 17th, decided cameras would be allowed in the courtroom. And then, of course, this afternoon's huge twist, and now we know that January trial date is not going to happen. Our coverage of this bombshell development in the case is far from over.
And like Bob mentioned,
and I don't think that January trial was going to happen anyway. That's just me, because that wrench was thrown in for the Odinist thing, because that gives the prosecution another hurdle, because then they have to get themselves, prepared. Could you imagine? It's going to be a televised trial. They bring up Odinists that are like, no, we wouldn't do it that way. It is another hurdle because the next defense team is going to have to get boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of documents to go through and get themselves prepared to give him the defense he deserves under the United States Constitution.
It's going to be interesting to see if the new defense team sticks with the Odinist defense and theory, or if that was just something that his other team invented.
They're going to have to find an expert that says this is not a normal crime scene. The staging of the bodies,
Right.
the tree, the way Libby's arm is stretched out. They're going to have to explain this crime scene to the jury.
Right. I mean, I definitely think there had to be more than one person involved, in my opinion. And then you go to the theory of was Richard Allen involved, and did he try to stage it to look like a cult ritual, or was it a cult ritual?
Well, and Christina has a great point. The FBI said early it was a staged scene. You see, the ritualistic rumors have been circulating since 2017. This is not new.
Right.
This
No,
is not new. And from a very trusted source, I was told we knew this was going to come out eventually.
right. We did know it was a staged scene from a very early point, but was it staged by him to look that way, or was it really somebody else that was part of a cult? You know what I mean? And especially with the whole Keegan Klein link and the Anthony shot, like, we can't forget about the fact that the whole Anthony Shots account.
We can't ignore that.
Right. And everybody, like, everybody jumped on the Odinist part of it and just completely forgot about the Anthony Shots and Keegan Klein link, and we can't ignore that. And then I hate to go here, but could it have been an ordered snuff film that somebody wanted it to look like a cult ritual and ordered something that looked like something?
Well, you smell what I'm stepping in, because I've always thought it's odd. The flash photography items in the shed, which we just heard this last year because we didn't really know about Richard Allen.
Right.
And we know that Kegan and his father took off to Las Vegas shortly after the girls were murdered.
Right.
And
And
you
was he selling some kind of footage? And one of the phones, didn't one of the phones get wiped before he returned, or disappear before he returned from Las Vegas? If I'm not mistaken.
That I do not know, but
I
you
think
can't.
whatever phone he took to Vegas either disappeared or was wiped before he returned. JMS, you say it wasn't filmed, though. How do you know that?
Oh, this could be evidence they're going to show at trial, because
Right.
it's not on the internet. Because as we know from like the Josh Duggar case, they have a deep dark web, and when they sell these things, and they went to Vegas on their own,
Right.
in person. So who knows? Who would know?
Then the day that Keegan Klein was brought in for questioning and they searched his house, there was something with his phone, one of his phones was not there because he had multiple phones. And when he came home, he was like, oh, my phone, like a few hours after he came home from his first interrogation or interview, he called and he's like, oh, I found another phone, or I found the other phone. And the reports were that he was deleting and reinstalling and deleting and reinstalling a bunch of his apps, which were like the Snapchats and WhatsApp, and I don't know all the like kitty apps that they use, but a bunch of the apps that he was communicating with young people on. So that apparently when you delete and reinstall the same app over and over, it makes it harder to retrieve that data from those apps. Because even though like a lot of the apps, they say that they can't, like Snapchat, they say you can't, the messages go away and they can't be retrieved. They can with good tech experts. But apparently if you delete and reinstall and delete and reinstall, it makes it harder to retrieve that data, or any data for that matter, on your phone the more you delete and reinstall things on your phone. Because it creates a deeper roadmap, for lack of a better term, because I'm not the most tech savvy person. But
I wouldn't even know where to start, but the FBI does.
Right.
And I have a feeling that the prosecutors are sitting on a lot. And we also know, because the probable cause is their weakest evidence. We know that from all the different cases that we have seen come to this point. So if anyone can retrieve it, it's going to be them.
Right.
So that's just speculation about Kegan and his father. But it's very hard in this case to ignore those two nasty bastards.
Right. And just the fact that they were communicating with Anthony Schatz, and they were supposed to meet Anthony Schatz there that day. Like, that's just, we can't ignore that. Like, he's the one that started the Anthony Schatz account. And I'm sure we just can't ignore it. And I don't know. There's just so much. The tentacles have tentacles.
That was Doug Carter's word. There's tentacles.
I say that all the time.
And it's still an open investigation. It's still an open investigation. I mean, it was even said that Kegan's Dropbox exposed one of the biggest CP, if you know what that means, rings in Indiana. That can't be ignored.
Right.
But the defense isn't going to talk about that because they can't group him, Richard Allen, in with a CP ring. Can't do it.
Right.
But you can't tell me it's not a little creepy that this wasn't posted on Kathy Allen's Facebook. This is their daughter on the same bridge. This was posted July 5th of 2018. Now, people will argue all day and they're like, oh, she took that picture in 2013. Not my point.
Right.
Not my point. We know someone in that house watches the news.
Right.
And they know what happened on that bridge. I would never have posted it.
Right. And she looks so much like Libby.
Yep.
It's so creepy.
Well, Cop Facts, he warned about these leaks and messing with the case a long time ago. And this is when documents were leaked by the murder sheet.
Right.
By the murder sheet. I know they don't like their name being brought up, but they're damn sure neck deep in it.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's no denying it. They're neck deep in it. I mean,
Yep.
they've been interviewing Keegan Klein. Like, how are they going to claim they're not in it? They were interviewing Keegan Klein before Richard Allen was even a known blip on the radar. I mean, if you go and look at their podcast, they have video interviews with Keegan Klein in jail.
Oh, they do. But so do other people. So does Barbara Marshall, the woman, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, that wrote the Down the Hill book. HLN, that did the entire documentary Down the Hill. I mean, a lot of people have talked to a lot of people, but our Clint Eastwood here, he warned about this. He warned about this. Let's listen to what he said.
Yep.
To the murder sheet, who may be in this room. Think about the word deplorable. Someone you regard with contempt, disdain, disgusting. Those are words that come to mind, definitions that come to mind. You've broken someone's trust for your own gain. You know, there's plenty of others who know way more than you do, but they're silent. That's called character. I want to thank Kristen from Behind the Crime Door, Steve from True Crime Web, two people I caught last night who condemned what you've done, and many others probably that I didn't catch. You should be ashamed. You've jeopardized this case. You've messed up the timeline for law enforcement. You've put people in danger. You've put KK in danger. You've put law enforcement in danger. You've probably tainted a potential jury. Character. Yours has been damaged. And it's deserved. I hope you got all the views you wanted. You know, there's a way that you can tell when it's really cold outside. You don't need a weatherman. But you can tell it's really cold outside when you see an attorney walking down the street with their hands in their own pockets.
And if that's not the damn truth, you can tell it's cold outside when you have an attorney with his hands in his own pockets. He was furious about the leak, and this is an old video. I shouldn't say old, not as recent. With the last leak that came directly from the murder sheet. They're denying this one. But let me ask you guys, do you think that this middleman exists or not? Because we are talking about tainting a jury. And it's odd to me that the photos came out after the Odin theory was dropped. What do you all think?
I don't think it was the defense directly that leaked them. I think there was somebody else involved, but I don't know. I mean, we may never know.
They would never do it themselves because that's a disbarment.
Right.
That's a disbarment. But they could easily tell someone, sit in the conference room, I'll be back in an hour to take you to lunch.
Right.
And whatever you need, you know where to send it.
Right. And which I think is more likely what may have happened. And the fact that the person who allegedly leaked them is no longer alive And then some people think that he didn't really do it to himself, that somebody did it to him to silence him. That's a whole nother theory. But I mean, again, I don't know enough to know. And the murder sheet is doubling down, saying, oh, he wasn't murdered. He did it to himself. But that's another conspiracy theory going around.
Nothing in this case would shock me.
Right, exactly. It's at that point where you just don't even know what to believe and what to think anymore.
Well, this is from Surviving the Survivor last night. If someone could drop their link in the channel, I would appreciate it. And a woman who was in the courtroom is going to describe the look on the family's faces. So when people say, I'm adult enough to see the crime scene photos, I get it. I am too. But how much pain do people have to go through?
And why would
Golden
you
State Killer?
want
This
to?
is not an easy road meeting the trials. There's different tactics and different things that can come up. Obviously, no one could have predicted this. I mean, maybe he could have, but he did say with the trial coming up, there's going to be a lot of challenges for him, his staff, meaning Superintendent Carter, and the family, saying the legal system is not friendly to the families, to the victims' families, and going through this. And of course, Brett, as you just mentioned, I was looking through that memo as well, thinking, why would Baldwin hire an attorney if he knew that going in? You're right, some sort of argument, I would assume, or maybe not argument, a realization that it wasn't going to go the way maybe they wanted. What that means, I really don't know specifically.
It'd be definitely interesting to find that out, as that information undoubtedly will come out at some point. Ski Hat Sarah very astutely points out someone committed suicide over this leak. There's another dead person as a result of this, and that is without a doubt a very serious issue. And Jilly being here, Sarah, the one who leaked it, did. Yeah, that is, as far as I know, that person's identity, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't fully know the identity or the connection. But Laura, you were just in Delphi. You were going there for the hearing. What were you expecting, and what did it turn out to be?
Now, I've got to find out more about this death. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to put out things that aren't true. Angela Halo said, out of respect, I don't think it's a good idea to view them. Who would want their own baby to be seen that way? But I understand the curiosity. Oh, I understand the curiosity too. 100%. Curiosity killed the cat. And the more these photos go around, and I agree with you 100%, Angela. It will taint a jury, and they're already going to have a hard enough time finding a jury. And we want justice for these two girls that were massacred off of that bridge.
To be for you.
Well, I mean, we went to, and we can talk about going to Delphi. I flew into Indianapolis. We went to Delphi to film, and then we went to Fort Wayne for the hearing. And it was a packed courtroom. We were expecting, finally, the judge in this case and the judge overall in this courthouse said, we're going to allow cameras in the courtroom. So it was one of the reasons why we went. so that we could see this process unfold. It's so important, as we all know, for this transparency to take place in these court hearings. We want to see and hear it for ourselves, what is going on. So the fact that cameras for the first time were going to be allowed was a really big deal. And the courtroom showed that it was, because it was packed. And I barely got a seat in there in between my live shots outside. And we had all of the family members of Abby and Libby on the left-hand side. And, people took off time from work and got babysitters and, rearranged schedules. It was a really big deal that everybody was there. And then on the side I was sitting on the right-hand side of the court, you could see Richard Allen's mother and his wife. They were in the front row. And what was really interesting, you guys, so we're all in there. And then the lawyers come out and they talk to Richard Allen's wife and mother. And they talk to him, and then the two attorneys for Richard Allen go back behind, closed doors. They come back again, and we're like, "What's going on?" You could clearly tell that something was going on, and just as you just described, probably detailed what happened in judges' chambers. But they came out, and then they got the wife and the mom. The two attorneys did, and they said, "Like, let's go outside." The wife and the mom of Richard Allen go out to the courthouse hallway. Then they come back in and get their sweaters. And now we're like, and it was a really miserable rainy day. And we're like, okay, something's really going on, because now they've got their coats and their purses and they're leaving. And then we waited another, what felt like, an hour. It was only 20 minutes. The judge came out, and that's when she said, and you've probably seen the tape, we've had a surprising turn of events, ladies and gentlemen, and the defense is withdrawn. And I could hear the sound on the other side of where the victims' families were sitting. And I saw somebody's head drop, like, no, this isn't happening, because we all know what a stall this is going to be and what a huge delay for justice this means, starting all over again with the defense team that is yet to be determined.
And that is horrible for these families, because as we know from other cases, most recent in our memory would be Gannon Stout, when his mother and father said, now that the gavel has come down, Letitia's in jail forever and a day, our grieving process starts all over. Closure for a murder victim's family is not when the casket lid shuts. It's when justice is served. What do you think, beautiful messy ball?
Sorry, I zoned out for a minute. I missed what you said.
Just at this delay. I mean, it just...
Oh, yeah, the delay. I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, we want justice. But again, like you said, justice delayed is... What's the saying? Justice delayed is justice denied, or something like that, the saying goes.
And justice is slow. Justice is a...
Justice takes time, and that's something that people don't realize. I mean, he wasn't arrested that long ago, if we really think about it. So, I mean, considering how long ago the crime happened, it's better that they take their time on the trial. I think, but at the same time, if these leaks are not real and just a distraction, it's a real shame. I mean, the leaks suck to begin with, but, and Christina, good point, that the grief never ends for the families. And even once they have a conviction, the grief is never going to end. But I think that when you have leaks like this and confusion like this, it's tearing the wound back open every time and making it even harder for the families to heal. And it reopens that wound. So
well,
a wound that's never going to heal, and it's making that wound fresh each time. I think. And that's the biggest shame of it, I think.
I won't be surprised if the trial isn't till 2025.
I won't either, to be honest. It really, like Snow just said, it could be years before we have a
events
trial.
that unfolded while you were there. Denise D here. Brett, not to beat a dead horse here, but Denise D. And by the way, people are yelling at me. Where are Bob and Allison Mata? They've been on a couple times. We're switching around our guests. They'll be back. Don't you worry. Last time Susan wasn't on. We are fair and equitable. Nothing happened. I still love Bob.
He's with Vinny. He's with Vinny.
Yeah, he's with.
Well, I love that clip and I love that show because when she was describing, the family basically just sinking in their seats, their heads coming over like, you've got to be kidding me. Because you don't have to be a legal eagle to know that if an attorney steps away, it's going to be a long time to get another attorney prepared to defend such a complex case.
Sure thing. Do we know if somebody's been appointed yet? And who has?
No, last I heard, no.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard anything either.
As of last night, there was nobody appointed.
Okay.
And some people will say no, especially with the pool they're having to pull from.
Right. I don't know how that works with pulling from a pool of private attorneys. How, like with public defenders, you can't really just say no. But, sorry, my kitten is nibbling on me.
Well, they can. I mean, if you look at the Sarah Boone case, she requires a lot of attention. Her attorney stepped away.
Right, but they couldn't just say no off the bat. They had to try, and they had to have a reason to.
Oh, he did. He said he can't give her the attention she needs. She should represent herself. He said,
but that was after months of him trying.
And he said, I've got capital cases I have to defend.
Right.
So I can't possibly take her on. And then they went through other attorneys and they looked at their trial docket and they said, well, they're not going to be able to do it either. They have to have time.
Right.
All right. So before I end, first off, let's tell beautiful Messy Ball, thank you so much for coming up, giving her insight. I just love her. She hopped down. Well, shoot. I hope she comes back. All right. This was on Navalus True Crime. I'm not sure where he clipped it from. I should have read the damn description, but you know how it happens around here sometimes. This is Keegan talking about how everything came to be. It seems to me he wants to blame his father altogether, and how his father is not in jail, I will never know. Let's go through this.
Thing started was they said that the Anthony Schatz account had contacted Libby and was talking to her, which I know 100% it was not me. But yeah, I know exactly who it was. The police know, but they don't want it.
Okay, so he's saying it was 100% not him. Other people had access to this Anthony Schatz account. He said the police know. He said it's 100% not me.
Say in the court,
Keegan Klein did an interview with Anya and Kevin from the Murder Sheet. He said he was back in his cell about an hour. This was the same day of his sentencing hearing. But I wouldn't be shocked if that was the first of many, many lies he told throughout this chat. Guaranteed he was back in that cell about 4 hours at least.
I so agree with Navalus because Keegan lies all the time.
There is no awakening here. There's no like suddenly Kegan becoming truthful because he got 40 years in prison. Didn't happen. He's an idiot. At times, he seems like he's well aware of the documents that are out there, especially on Tony and stuff like that. And then other times, he must be clueless to some of the stuff that's out there on him because he is still saying stuff that we know are lies. They have the data from his phones, and that data does not lie. We have a lot of information from court documents, from search warrants, and there are some things that he has said in this new interview that we know 100% he is lying. He's making excuses, he's shifting the blame, very much like what his probation officer said he does. No accountability, and you just don't know what to believe. So there are some things that he said that we know 100% he's still lying. And there is other stuff that we don't know 100% if he is lying, but he probably is. I'm going to go through here 7 or 8 of the main things that I took from the interview. But obviously, important to note, Kegan is a liar. I don't know what to believe him about. Nothing. I can't believe him about anything, really, unless you've something else to back it up. He is so frustrating. The detectives who interrogated him, they seem to do a good job. I would lose my head trying to get some truthful information out of Kegan. Kevin from the murder sheet, I thought was kind of funny in this interview. He was straight in there with some key questions at times. I think it's an intentional soft cop, good cop version that they're trying to do. Anya's like, "Hi Kegan, we appreciate you. Can you hear us okay?" Very soft, gentle with Kegan, which will help with someone like him. And this is what Anya's doing. She's doing a good job. She's a journalist trying to get information, but Kevin goes straight in. He's like, "Spill the beans, spit it out. Tell us about Delphi. You told us, you tell us, we're here now." Kegan straight away pulls back on some of the stuff he teased. He does go on to say stuff, but he starts off with like, "Oh, well, it's not really Delphi. What I wanted to tell you about was the cops, how they harassed me, how they kept looking for information from me. And I'm not sure if this is a message for us or if it's a message for Tony." He said he wanted to point out some of the stuff that he was harassed and hounded for information. He gets onto the airbase interview and they kind of drag information out of him from there. He played dumb about the Wabash River search. He said this isn't because of him. He didn't tell them anything. They made it look like he did. And
No, they didn't make it look. They didn't make anything look like anything. They pulled his fat ass out of the cell. They sat him down. They had new information. They had new evidence. They spoke to Kegan. And then next thing you know, they were searching the river. And it wasn't long after that that Richie Allen, was arrested.
And after that search as well, they blocked all his calls from Tony and he can't even talk to his dad. But he didn't tell them anything, which is a lie, because there's no way they would have done the searches that they did unless Kegan told them something. They push him a little bit in it and he says, "Oh, they asked me what do I think he would have done in a situation like that." It's all nonsense. What Kegan is trying to do is have the best of both worlds. Be like, "Oh, I didn't tell him it was you, Dad, so please talk to me." But he did. He did. And he still is in this interview. And I don't know where he's getting that that they have his calls blocked to Tony. Tony knows what he said in that interview because of the searches that followed it. So Tony is the one. He's come out and said he's blocked Kegan. Doesn't want to talk to him anymore over what he said. Here's a 30-second clip from the interview where he's blaming Tony.
What the whole thing started was they said that the Anthony Shots account had contacted Libby and was talking to her, which I know 100% it was not me. I'm not saying that I didn't make the account. I'm not saying any of that. But I know for a fact 1,000,000,000% it was not me talking to her. Oh yeah, I know exactly who it was. The police know, but they don't want to say it in the court. They don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to ruin the person's life and say it, but the police know who it was. I mean, I don't know if you guys can read the transcript. I don't know if that's out there or anything through our conversation. They say who it was. They say right in there, "We know it wasn't you for a fact, 100%. The person that used the account, I know if that's before."
He's basically saying he wasn't using the phone that contacted Libby. It was someone else, and he thinks it's Tony. They ask him about a deal, and is that why this conversation happened at the airbase? And Kegan basically says no. He says it was because this girl was writing to him. She told him she wanted to get married to him. She sent him paperwork. She met him in the prison and showed him a load of money and said that she's going to bail him out if he just says everything of what happened with Delphi. So that's why he talked, apparently. And then she left him. He's heartbroken. He's asked about the men in the background. I talked about that in the last video, that it was said one of the victims said that Kegan video called her and there was other men in the background. He was looking for a gangbang. He says that's nonsense, did not happen. He's asked directly, did he ever give an address to anyone else? He says no. And we know from his sentencing hearing, he asked for addresses or locations from 8 of the 11 victims that they identified. They ask him about the DNA searches in Vegas. And here again, he starts lying. He says, oh, I found that phone in the back of the rental car, which is lies.
Okay, and we're going to go through this in the next show because we're going to do a deep dive about Kegan and Tony. Why would they do a DNA search in Vegas? Who went to Vegas? Kegan and Tony. Shortly after the horrific murders of Abby and Libby.
We know he set up the phone under Kegan Klein photography. He factory restored it when he was in Vegas. A lot of people are suspicious about what was on that phone and the reason for the trip to Vegas. And again here, he's saying basically that it wasn't him who searched how long does DNA last, and it wasn't him who listened to Bridge Guy's voice over and over again in Vegas. That was someone else. That was the person he can't say, Tony. He said he doesn't know if Tony or the person, wink wink, he thinks used his phone knows Richard Allen. And here is when he just regurgitates things that people told him. Oh, people told me that he was living in Peru or he was working in CVS in Peru. And it's funny how he goes from being a fountain of knowledge in the Delphi case. He knows where Richard Allen was living. He knows where Richard Allen was working. But yet, at the same time, he's like, I don't know if you've seen that transcript. I don't know, it might say it in there who they think has the phone. He knows what's in the transcripts. And there's been a few times where he's tried to get Kevin and Anya to say it about Tony. Kegan is annoying. I don't believe anything he says without having other information to back it up. He's incredibly frustrating. And I can see why Indiana State Police, I don't think they want to talk to him anymore. They're like, we tried so many times. We can't verify anything that you've told us. They spent a small fortune on river searches, on searches of fire pits in people's backyards. And it seems they found nothing. Nothing to back up anything that Kegan has told them. And maybe the only link from Richard Allen to Klein's is that they stumbled across the Allen tip because they ran into a dead end with all the Klein stuff. They ran into a dead end. They were like, right, back to the start. Let's start looking over all these old tips. And that's when they stumbled across Richard. However, going against that, they've also told us there is a social media connection, and they said they don't believe Richard Allen was alone. So what is it? Either they pull back on that information and be like, we were wrong, Richard was a lone wolf, or else there's a connection to someone else. If there is a connection to someone else, it seems for now, and maybe forever, they don't have the evidence, which is probably going to be a big problem in the Richard Allen case, I would imagine. Go check out the podcast, check out the full interview. I will link.
Okay, now OJ is knocking everything off the desk. That's what that crash was. Until the Kegan Klein connection and Tony Klein connection and this CP ring is explained, it's going to be a big problem for the defense. A huge, huge problem. Because there is always going to be that elephant in the room. Always. Yes, OJ has this game we play. It's called Fetch. But OJ doesn't fetch. I'm supposed to fetch. He has a routine. he goes into the living room, and I have all these pictures that I have around our entertainment center, and he knocks them over one by one. They look like damn dominoes. And he looks at me like, are you going to pick them up? Then he gets on the coffee table and he starts knocking stuff off. Then he comes up here to the desk, and anything I have on the desk, he just starts knocking it off little by little. Yeah, it's quite the game we have, but I'm not losing any weight from it. Momo said if RA is involved and not acted alone, why not spill the beans? Great point. Because they had to be so frustrated dealing with Kegan over and over and over and over. They're constantly chasing their tail, talking to his ass. He just tells one lie after another. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been a great show, and I'm so glad that you guys were all here. Now, we're going to be back in a couple of hours, actually. We have a guest coming on to talk about Kyron Horman. Kyron Horman is still missing, and that case has been at a standstill for a very, very long time. And we got to keep it going again because, well, his parents deserve justice for him. So again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Mod Squad. Thank you, new members. Thank you for the donations to the channel. And we're going to continue this conversation because I'm going to do a whole show about Kegan, Tony, how they know Richard, the whole 9 yards. So buckle up. We'll get through it. So I'll see you guys back here in a couple of hours. And as always, thank you for being the best chat and best community on YouTube.